a little bit of a shaking of head going, okay.
Here we go. Good evening, keepers of the cash. Gary B, the Casual Comic Guy here, and welcome one and all to an all-new episode of the 1011. Joining me, as always, every Tuesday, we got my good buddy, Rob Fat Stax of Comics. How you doing tonight, Rob?
I'm awake. I'm here. End of month is over and behind me. Let's rock and roll.
There you go. And, of course, we have another co-host this evening, the one and only Mark Andrews.
And I protested this co-host, but to no avail.
Yeah, but you just sit back because you'll get your moment. Anyway, thanks for having me, Gary. It's always a pleasure being on your show, especially when you have like a ripe, target-rich environment.
Right. Well, I think someone called him Golden Age Joe, and I said, "Don't you mean Stone Age Joe?"
Stone Age. Right.
Wow.
But guys, another reason too is Mark.
You know, we were in Ukraine.
See, Rob. See.
I didn't know we were in Ukraine, man. Fucking shots are being fired.
Right. And Mark Andrews will also be in the hot seat this Thursday, and the roles are going to be reversed.
Guess who's going to be on the panel?
Oh, Joe's going to be on the panel. He's already agreed to it.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Of course, without further ado, our man of the hour tonight, making his second appearance as a guest on the 1011. You know him, you love him. Anachronic Comics. Joe, how you doing tonight, sir?
I'm doing great, Gary. Thank you so much for not inviting me back. I had to invite myself, but that's okay.
I was hoping for some begging. You almost got there, but...
Well, listen, you said Stone Age Joe, but let me tell you, anachronic, the definition of anachronic is chronologically misplaced. All right. So here in the 2020s, I am chronologically misplaced. I continually go back to pretty much to Silver Age, Bronze Age, some Golden Age thrown in, that type of thing. So that's the whole idea of Anachronic Comics. So I don't take offense at Stone Age, although that was probably pre-Platinum Age, I believe. So I'm not sure what was there. So,
well, before we get going, we'll let you before we say hi to the audience, let them know about your channel and what you do, Joe.
I think I just did.
All right. I didn't know if you wanted to
I'll say a little bit more. So I started a channel a few years ago, and although I do some modern stuff, we basically have, I talk about my collection for the most part in terms of the pre-recorded stuff. We have a couple of live shows that go on. We have the Comic Book Crowd, which is usually the last Friday of the month, where myself and four of my cohorts get together and we discuss some topic. Usually it's, pretty interesting topic. And it could go from comics to movies or what have you. I have a couple of friends three friends that join me on DC Watch. There's so much Marvel on these YouTube channels that we decided just to do a DC only show. We just had one that we did the other day where we reviewed the Blue Beetle movie, which I think is worthwhile to watch. And, other than that, I guest star on other shows and generally have a good time.
Espresso mail call.
I was waiting for espresso mail call.
I was going to wait until the end for that because I was going to announce we're having another espresso mail call. But we do have espresso mail call.
I'm sorry.
Where Mark, that's okay. Where Mark is often one of the guests, and people come in and show books that they've just gotten. But the good thing about it's not new books. It's not like Tuesday, Wednesday, new books. It's a lot of the guys that we have on are, steeped in comic book collecting going way back. And so I think it comes, and you find some really interesting things that they come up with. And then you're forced to go out and try to find your own copy of it. That's the essence of the show.
Right. Well, Mark's already pretty good at spending my money for me. So I try not to be on any shows with Mark sometimes.
Right. There you go.
But it doesn't work because he just sends me pictures on Instagram and I go spend the money anyway.
Yeah.
All right. Let's say hi to everyone in the chat. First in, as always, we have Las Cruces. Good evening, James. How you doing, sir? Kevin, how you doing? Hope Collector 82. Stephanie, good evening. How you doing? And we have Paul from Psychedelic Comics. Good evening, Paul. How are you, sir? Steve White, Steve the Voice White. How you doing, Steve? And I'm always going to say it. One of my favorite people ever, Jerry the Jitterbug. How you doing, Jerry? One of the best dudes out there. Wellbore, Brad, how you doing tonight, sir? Fellow Canadian for Mark, showing the Canadian love. Steve White as well, right?
Yep.
Yeah. And, the Ultimate Blue Wrench, Miss Tina Carrington. Nice to see you.
Tina.
Thank you for coming in. And good evening. Doug Bratton's here. Good
Doug.
evening. Nice to see you, sir. And we are getting through. Oh, there's a whole lot of conversation. Tina and Doug are taking it up, and look at them go. Brian LCS is here. Good evening, Brian. How you doing?
Brian.
And wow, we got DVH, Dr. Von Hoots. How you doing tonight, sir? Trev, the shipping guru. Always nice to see you, buddy. And I got to go watch DVH's new box video. He got his Wrestle box. It's always fun to watch it. He gets so excited. Ronnie Boy Comics, how you doing this evening? Nice to see you. And we are almost there, I think. And Ronnie Boy. Oh, Naman, how you doing tonight, sir? D Brat 71, nice to see you.
It's Dave.
Oh, hey, Dave Bratton, how you doing, sir?
He's incognito now.
Right? Not if he gives it away.
Well,
Roger, how you doing? You got to teach him better, Mark. Phil Haley, how you doing, sir? Like McHale's Navy over there, right?
Mm.
Couch in the Slancha with C. Bizzle, how you doing, sir?
Dave is.
The barbs are coming out tonight. What can I say? The Jackson Roy Kirk. And,
Part 15.
Mr. Matt Woods. Seth 11. Who is this new guest?
I don't.
Right? He's so old, he's new again. I'm going to get hate mail from Joe.
Yeah, and some other of us, because I think this is getting really close on the age.
That's really Joe.
I'm not that far off. And back to action, Kyle the Ranger. Nice to see you, sir. Good evening. John Stout, how you doing, sir?
Hey, John.
All right, and Joe, I think we are to your books, buddy. Let's see what you got first for us. Now, you told me you got quite the setup tonight, so I'm pretty excited to see what you have.
Who told you that?
I have it on an Instagram message.
Joe's doing all moderns.
All moderns that he picked up yesterday.
So the first time I was on, unlike Matt Woods, who spent a lot of time going over all the books he had, I'll just say that I had so many bangers there that I thought that Rob was having a heart attack. Because I rewatched it.
You mean you thought I was doing a mail call?
Well, you've caught up. I was going to say that. This was about a year ago. So with your various mail calls now, you've gotten so many of those books that, now when you relook at it, you'll be saying to yourself, why was I going like this and like this? Because I got them all. So congratulations to you, Rob. You did a great job. So this time around, it's going to be a little different, because I was looking at some books and I said, you know what, let me take out books and things that I kind of like, for whatever different type of reasons, And so the first one is, and these first set of books are basically given as kind of a tribute to your co-host, Mark Andrews, and to Steve White, and to Milt, Flowers Comics, who's not here. Being a child of the 60s, we grew up with television, right? The 3 network channels here in New York. Right. We had a couple of local channels as well. And if you say quieres hablar español, you went to UHF and UHS and the channel 47. So anyway, so I looked and I said, do I have any of those books? I knew I had some books from TV shows back then. Not as many as some of these other people have, but I figured I'd just show them off. So the first one,
Spanish language channel out here was 48.
Was 48? I thought it was 47.
No, right. Out here.
Oh, I was
one number higher is all.
And 41 had Spanish, but sometimes had Italian. So my father used to put that on now and then. But the first one is The Rat Patrol.
The Rat Patrol.
Seek, nice. Find, and Destroy. Now, if you ever, I don't know if it's still on, probably could find this somewhere.
Yep.
But these guys were great. You know why? Because they used to blow up stuff the whole time. you know. And it was basically they would go against Rommel in North Africa. They were in the desert most of the time, and it was just great stuff. So the Rat Patrol was one of the books that was there.
Great show.
Great
awesome show.
The other one's a little bit newer, but I happen to have it, and I have so many books that are downstairs. I just was kind of looking through some boxes, and I came up with.
Oh, yeah.
18. Now, this one, I was not too keen on this show too much, right? But I used to watch it because it used to make me laugh. I mean,
It was just good, silly fun.
It was silly,
right? It was just silly fun.
And Murdoch.
Yeah. I mean, it was just great stuff. And so, Mr. T, he's front and center in number one here because he was front and center pretty much. Couldn't act a lick.
Nope.
But he looked great, right? And he used to beat up guys. So it was a great.
George Papard, I swear, just got propped up when it was time for him to speak.
Right.
Here you go.
George.
Okay.
And the last TV show that I'm going to show is one that now in the 1960s, James Bond started off, and you had Secret Agent Man, The Prisoner. You had all these great spy-related shows.
Get Smart.
But the best one, I think, was. What do you think it was, Mark? What was the best one on TV?
Oh, see, you just named some of my favorites. But I bet you Mission Impossible.
Oh,
wow.
No, Man from Uncle.
The Man from Uncle, because it was silly, fun, and you had Napoleon Solo and Ilya Kuryakin, the Russian and the American together.
Yes.
And do you remember what Uncle stood for or stands for?
Oh, United
Network
Law Enforcement
Command.
I can't remember.
United Network Command for Law Enforcement.
That's it. Command. I forget.
They always fought Thrush, was it? I think it was Thrush. And on the TV show, they never mentioned what Thrush was.
No.
But in a book, because I looked it up. I said, I don't remember what Thrush was. Movie origin was good. I don't remember what Thrush was, and I looked it up, and they said never mentioned on TV, which I thought was correct because I don't remember them ever mentioning. But then I found out that in a book or something, somebody came up, I think, as a joke with the title for it. I thought it was worth reading out. Technical Hierarchy for the Removal of Undesirables and the Subjugation of Humanity. So somebody worked really hard to come up with that.
That's really.
Most of those shows worked really hard for their acronyms. But.
Yes, and what the woman from Uncle, girl from Uncle.
Oh yeah, that was what was her name?
Stephanie Powers.
Stephanie Powers, another.
Yeah. Now, how could you not like Stephanie?
Well, I saw her
Powers?
face immediately when you said that, but I'm old now, so I don't remember names. So that's my problem.
Right now, Robin and Gary are going, what are these old dudes talking about?
I remember, I mean, I've seen it, but I was really not. Man from Uncle didn't excite me as much. I was more into Get Smart.
Well, Get Smart was actually some pretty interesting, intelligent humor that was just over the top.
But it was pure comedy, right?
Absolutely.
Right. And when I was watching this, I was a wee bit younger. So the pure comedy and the absurdity appealed to me greatly as a young child.
Buck Henry wrote that.
That's right.
Would you believe? Missed me by that much.
And you'll be scared to hear this, but in my old job, we actually used to talk about the cone of silence. We needed it to be lowered.
Hey, we did that in our job too, right? Attorney-client privilege.
That when you had chaos and control.
Yeah.
All right. So we'll move now to kind of movies. As I was looking through my box,
Roger,
my shoe was ringing, right? That was the best part. I wanted one of those shoes. But anyway, move over to the movies. And I was looking through, and I have some books that are involved with movies, something like, like Superman Returns, other books that are there. But this came across. I was looking for, anachronically typed defined books. So I found that I had both the 2-part book on Blade Runner.
Yep.
All right.
Ooh, nice.
Now, Blade Runner, as you know, was 1982, I believe. And of course, it was written by Ridley Scott, I believe, also. And the interesting about this was that when it came out, I watched it, right? When it came out, and I said, okay. but I've
Yep.
watched it probably 3 or 4 times since, and it kind of grows on you.
It does.
And it kind of grows on you.
It does.
And I just watched it maybe about a month or two ago too, and I said, this is pretty damn good. There's a lot of good stuff there.
Right. It ages really well.
It ages really well.
It has aged really well.
I liked it a lot more on future watchings than I did when I first watched it. I'm like, and now I really like it.
Now I haven't watched the new one. Was it?
I haven't seen 2049.
The interesting thing about this was what was the year? 2019?
Right.
Yeah, it's passed.
I think it occurred in 2019.
We don't have one flying car. Damn it.
We thought we were going to have flying cars. Now in 2019, if you look at that city, I mean, Los Angeles, it looked terrible. Right. It was all this thing about overpopulation and all the rest of this type of stuff that was going on, right? You had the fire coming out of the smelts or whatever the heck it was in the city, and there was no greenery to see. It was all these tall buildings and all this.
And that huge Atari sign kind of didn't. That one doesn't age well.
But it's worth a lot of money if you have it now.
I love the noir. The sci-fi noir feeling of it, just like when he's at the noodle bar and stuff. Like it's just great.
Well, the next set of books that I have, I told Gary he can't count these books. He just got to let me go through them because I couldn't get just the books. In this book, there was an ad for Mile High Comics.
Yes,
which still exists today, right? And in that book, they were selling copies of Fantastic Four numbers 48, 49, and 50.
Ooh.
If you wanted number 48,
that one
cost you $17.95.
Ooh.
Look at his eyes sparkling when he quotes how much he's had to spend on those books.
I spent only 12 cents for this one, but
if
you wanted it from Mile High back then, you had to spend $17 and whatever. But this cost me 12 cents. Number 49 was cheaper. Number 49 was only $9 back in 1982 if you wanted to buy from Mile High Comics. Right?
It still is cheaper.
It still is cheaper, correct. And the cheapest, but it was still $9 back in 1982 from Mile High Comics was number 50.
Oh, nice.
Yep.
So since I saw that ad in there, and there were other ads too, but I said, this is kind of interesting. Let me pull those books out. So anyway, so that
calling them up and say, hey, I see your ad in this book for this. Can I get that, please?
Right. Yeah, otherwise, could we go after him for false advertising, or is there like a moratorium on that, Joe? I was going
to cut the coupon out, but then it would ruin the book.
It would
send it in with the asking for 9.
We were joking about that. What a great live stream that would be, is because I had on Monday when I had opened up my the 2 flashes. And I mentioned that there was the Revolutionary War soldiers on the back. Yeah. Somebody were joking about what a live stream that would be. Let's just crack it open, cut out the coupon, and send it in and see, and watch the world go ablaze.
I can never. It always upset me as a kid. Like, why would you put a coupon on the opposite side where there's part of the story? It would drive me nuts.
Yep. And there's a lot of clip books out there.
Well, when I became a member of the Mary Morrow Marching Society, that was part of the issue. But I just got a Thor book that I didn't like. And I tore up that page. And then
now, did you ever cut out the Marvel stamps, Joe?
No.
No? Yeah, I wouldn't have either.
Nope.
I didn't cut out anything like that. That some of them had centerfolds and the rest of that type of stuff. I never cut any of that stuff out.
Yep. We did it all with our Star Wars action figures, but the card wasn't the same as a comic book.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just
seahorses almost got me though. I almost cut up the book for the seahorse. Yeah, that was.
I was always that book nerd where I didn't want to. I was always, even as a kid, I was trying to keep all my books in great shape.
And that served you well, hasn't it?
That's
Oh no, because all the books I have now are from my childhood. I had to rebuy everything.
That's why Gary kept going to the. Well, we won't get into that now. Oh, I did want to say one thing I forgot. That Man from U.N.C.L.E. was so great. They actually came out in kind of these magazine forms with the stories inside.
Oh, that's cool.
I happened to find this one downstairs, 50 cents. And there's Leo G. Carroll as well as I forgot what was his name in this thing. or whatever. But he was the head of the whole thing.
Yeah.
You know, but it was pretty cool because you came out, you bought the book, and they actually have in this book kind of a
nice Milt.
I guess
Of course, Milt does.
dossiers on each one of the characters as if they were real people and all that.
Since you're kind of interested in records again a bit, Joe, they also have 2 Man from Uncle records and 1 Girl from Uncle record.
Really? Okay.
They're up there.
Well, when I go to these different places like antique stores, I usually look for those type of things. Haven't been successful to find them yet.
They're there. You will be.
Okay.
Just don't tell your lovely bride whose idea it was that you should be buying records now. Please.
I won't.
These old things, I had these laying around.
Yeah. I've had these for ages.
They don't sell these anymore.
She doesn't have a clue. You hear these people who, oh, my wife bought me this set, this book, this like that. No.
You know how that my house, my wife says, why don't you just go buy yourself something? I said, really? What? How much were you thinking of spending, dear?
Well, what I do with my kids.
Okay, got it.
With my kids, they always say, well, Dad, I don't know what to buy for you. I said, I need some BCW short boxes. Or I need some bags and boards, you know, or I need a gift certificate to Midtown Comics. And that's what I get all that stuff from them.
Right.
Yeah.
Supplies are good because who wants to spend their own money on supplies, right? Like,
well, yeah.
Like, you want to buy books, not supplies.
All right.
When
it's really messy, that's what you say to your
Mark. Mark, it's my show. Please come on. All right. I'm sorry.
You can get them back Thursday, Mark.
I know. That's what I'm already thinking about.
Just let it stew. Let it build up.
Listen, I love Mark. That's why I do it.
Oh,
okay.
Yeah, I'm just saying the ball busting is going to continue.
It's part of the routine. Anyway, so as I mentioned on DC Watched about a few days ago, we did our review of the Blue Beetle movie. And so I thought I'd bring up some books that have to do with the Blue Beetle, but primarily with Ted Kord. I mean, I do have Jaime Reyes's first appearance in Infinite Crisis. I do have his #1 and all that, but probably everybody's been showing and all that, so who cares about that? So Ted Kord was always my Blue Beetle. I loved Ted Kord. When he got shot by Maxwell Lord, it was, what the hell? So thankfully, I knew in comics, you always come back to life somehow. There's going to be a crisis event. Something's going to happen. Change stuff, you know, Flashpoint, whatever. So I was happy about that. But his first appearance was in Captain Atom #83. Right? It was like a 7-page story in there. And Steve Ditko drew the story and helped plot it out. So it's pretty cool to see Ditko's artwork on the Blue Beetle. It doesn't get into how he became the Blue Beetle, all right, and so forth. That comes a little bit later on. So,
you know, Joe, is that the same guy who was the Charlton Blue Beetle, or are they different guys?
Well, the first one was Dan Garrett.
Because that's the one I really liked as a kid. I love that original costume.
Okay, well, you'll see it in a minute. But Dan Garrett was the first Blue Beetle. Ted Kord was the second, and then Jaime Reyes became the third Blue Beetle after the Crisis event. So,
Gary, it is Charlton.
Yeah.
It is. That was a Charlton book.
Well, I'm not sure I understood your question then. Dan Garrett was the first Blue Beetle. He goes back before Charlton, actually, but then was Charlton. And then Ted Kord, this is a Charlton magazine. You know, and he had a series in the Charlton magazine.
There was Dan Garrett. Then there was Dan Garrett, because there were 2 Dan Garretts. And then there was Ted Kord.
Dan Garrett. But didn't they change his name? Wasn't it something like Dave or something like that?
It was. They changed the spelling.
The spelling. Okay. All right.
So it was questionable whether it was one person or 2 people.
How do you change the spelling of Dan? Or is it
Garrett?
No, Garrett. Was it 2 T's and 1 T or something?
Something like that. Yeah. So that's what. There's always the question of: is it one person or was it 2 different people?
Same person.
Who held them?
Oh, Chuck's taking shots at you, Joe.
Joe reaching into his middle age.
So when so people should know that the DC eventually, bought out all the Charlton characters, and so Ted Kord in 1986 through 1988 had a 24-issue run of his own magazine. Now, the reason I bring this up is not so much about Ted Kord, but about Carapax, the villain in the movie. Carapax was actually an archaeologist that was, as an archaeologist, was a competitor's of Dan Garrett, who was also an archaeologist. All right. And so Carapax did not become the person he was, the kind of robotic type of person he was back in the Charlton days. He was just a kind of a antagonist to Dan Garrett. So in this particular magazine, number 1, you actually see Carapax as a architect, as a archaeologist in here. And the whole thing is that at the time when Dan Garrett was killed, essentially by Ted Kord's uncle, and he was dying, he told Ted, please take up the mantle of the Blue Beetle. But unfortunately, the Scarab didn't work for him. But because he was a, billionaire, we've heard this before, billionaire, scientific genius and all this, he was able to use his money and his, basically his background and Kord Industries to do, all the stuff that he does. So you see him appearing here, all right? Then, I had 2 copies, I guess. One is a newsstand and one is direct. He then finally
just got 2 copies.
Yeah.
I got
the direct and the
how did that get in here?
Well, look at, because both of those, like at that time frame, like a direct copy is hard to get. Newsstand was normal,
easier, right?
Yeah.
So Carapax ends up.
What is going on with this?
First being seen in Blue Beetle number 14 inside, and his first appearance was on the cover. Was on Blue Beetle number 15. Now, the thing about Carapax was he was very different than in the movies. Here, what happened was he went to the island where Dan Garrett passed away, thinking, why did Dan Garrett go to this island and end up getting killed? There must be something there of real big value. Remember, that was kind of his thing. Kept on trying to find these things before Garrett did, so he can make money and sell them.
Oh, nice.
So when he goes there, he ends up accidentally having his mind put into a robot. So it's not
accidentally.
I hate when that happens.
What happened? I was walking down the hall and I slipped and I fell. My brain fell into this robot.
You got to read
the book. Sign that said, "Do not push this button." So
he wanted money, and he didn't pay attention to the signs. So basically he was kind of a robot, right? And he ended up showing up quite a bit in Blue Beetle. He fought Superman once, I think, and a few other people as well. So the thing about it is, in the movie, you see him kind of a little bit different. They made it a little bit more emotional about him and so forth, being a little boy and Victoria Kord taking advantage of him. And at the end, he kind of looks, robotic, but they also combined something in DC lore, which kind of annoyed me. They also said he was the prototype for the OMAC. All right.
Oh, okay.
And the OMAC.
In the movie, they say that?
Yeah, they did say that. The OMAC has shown up in quite a few different DC kind of comic book and series. Ostensibly, it was something that's created by Brother Eye, which was created by Batman to keep an eye on the superheroes and that type of thing. But the original OMAC is something that people don't know about. All right. The original OMAC was, here is OMAC issue number 1, the 20 center. If you take a look at the artwork, can you tell me who originated OMAC? This is an October 1974 comic book. If you look at that woman who is in pieces, all right, It's a Jack Kirby creation.
Oh.
So this was created. OMAC was created by Jack Kirby, and if you read this book, it's very different than the OMAC that you see later on in the Crisis Events and so forth. You know, and Max Lord and that type of thing. But basically, he's got a mohawk and so forth. It's kind of an interesting take on it. Honestly, I don't even know if there was a number 2. All right. Okay. So thank you, Sleepy Reader. It was really well done. Like a lot of the DC Jack Kirby stuff was. I mean, it was taken by DC later on, all of that stuff, and just kind of followed along. So this was one of his creations, OMAC. All right. So I see
that's a really nice copy in the white, Joe, because you usually don't see it that crisp.
Yeah, it's dirty. You can't tell it's dirty. It would need a.
Well, you see, I gave you a book. You could have just said, yes, it's lovely, and just put it away from the camera, and we wouldn't have known it was dirty.
I'm honest, man.
He's going to send it to Jerry.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's got a couple of issues with it, but you know what? You buy it back in 1974. It's in a box. It's in an attic. It's fine. Now, the next part is I want to focus a little bit on, one of my faves, which is Roy Thomas. I've told a lot of stories about him. I don't want to get back into it too much anymore, but he has
never mentioned him.
Excuse me?
Never once have you ever mentioned Roy Thomas.
Okay, well, let me start from the beginning then. No.
or the Justice League.
Yeah, or the Justice League, or...
Oh, well, I will be mentioning the Justice League in a few minutes, but that's okay.
There's a shock.
Take control, Joe.
God damn it! Look, Joe, they're contagious. I've been infected.
I know. I could tell you. You're always the nicest guy, and now look at what's happening here.
Anyway. This is his front on YouTube.
Anyway, so Blue Beetle, The Eye of Horus. This is one of the issues of the Dan Garrett Blue Beetle. I forget which one this is. Did I write it down somewhere? Hold on a sec. Oh, yeah. Number 54 from 1966. This was written by Roy Thomas when he was still a fan and he was trying to break into it. Charlton was putting together a contest, and it says here, from ancient Egypt came the enslaved worlds of the Eye of Horus. So it sounds almost like a Marvel type of Stan Lee type of title. So the number 54 was his first, not his first published book. I think it was his first one that he wrote, if I remember it correctly now. So that was the Blue Beetle back in 1966 of March. And we find out later on in DC lore that these Charlton characters all existed on Earth 4, incidentally. But Son of Vulcan,
Ooh.
all right,
that's a cool book.
Was actually the first book that he wrote. So the way he explained it was one was written and submitted first, but the other one got published first. So there was only a few of these Son of Vulcan books that came out, and he wrote this one here. Yeah.
There was, how many of those because those aren't easy to find, those Son of Vulcan books.
Well,
there wasn't a lot of them, were there?
No, there wasn't. I think there were somewhere between 2 and 4. I can't remember now, because he was in his number 48. This is number 50. But you remember Charlton was really crazy with their numbering systems, because they could change the title but keep numbers going. And so it's hard to figure out. But I think there might have been 48, 49, and 50. Might have been 3. Don't hold me to that. I'd have to look it up. I don't remember. I did know it one time, but I'm old and I forget. So just from a Roy Thomas perspective, of course, he started off with Alter Ego, the fanzine, taking over number 7. And he published 7, 8, 9, 10, and then after a hiatus of 7 years, he published number 11. And then with Tomorrow's Publishing, he has now started, he has been publishing I guess it's monthly version of Alter Ego now for a number of years.
Mm-hmm.
But at one point in time, he had an idea. And his idea was that Alter Ego should be a hero. And so he came up with this, and it was, what was the name? First Comics. He came up with this hero, Alter Ego. And the interesting so Alter Ego was an interesting hero in that his adventures occurred in the past. All right. He was a little boy, and he got a ring that he found when his family went to Egypt. His father was involved somehow. I forget now whether it was in politics or something like that. And he got a ring from a pharaoh, and he became basically a superhero. So it sounded a lot like a lot of the stuff that was out there, but it lasted, I think, 4 issues. And then another company bought the rights to it, and he published the 5th issue a number of years ago. And this summer, there were supposed to be 2 more issues published by that same company.
You're going to send me down a rabbit hole, Joe.
Yeah. I forget the name of it now. I think the company, did I write down the company? I don't remember now. But it was like basically 36 years later, you know.
Who did the cover on that, Joe? Do you know?
I'm sorry?
Do you know who did the cover on that? That's really cool.
Ron Lindsay, I think, was the name of the guy.
That is really cool.
I'm sorry, Ron Harris. Got it wrong. Ron Harris.
Damn you and your alter ego.
Okay. So that's my tribute to
for
Roy Thomas in there. So.
Nice.
That was kind of short. I'm surprised.
Oh,
you and I share.
Gary told him it was an hour-long show.
Oh, okay. So I figured more.
I could have went downstairs and gotten all 4 of them and talk a little bit more about it, but I just figured it was my kind of little Roy Thomas tease on that. So
well, it worked, Joe, because Gary's spending money already. He's got his phone off to the side already looking for Alter Ego.
Anyway, so again, these are kind of books that I like and all that, you know. So I know they're not super bangers or anything like that, but I think I wanted to show some of those off because I have them down there and nobody else cares about them except for me. Now
that's not true.
Okay, so now because Rob was asking for Justice League, I always liked the idea of having multiple heroes in a book. You know, and when my mom told me to get rid of half my books, the ones that I kept pretty much were ones that had multiple heroes, some single, but mostly multiple heroes. The thing with the Justice League was that I kind of fell in love with the whole idea when it came out. And it was another one of the ones where I didn't quite get number 1 right away and had to go looking for it. And originally the one that I got has, and I still have it downstairs, has no cover on it. So it did go out later on and did get one that did have a cover on it because I just wanted to make sure I had a good copy of that. But what really got to me, and Rob, you know my love of Flesh for Two Worlds, and I'm really happy that you got a copy of it there. And I'm still debating whether to send mine in just to get it encapsulated to keep it, you know, as good as it can possibly be. Right. But the thing that really got me then was when the Justice Society of America came into play. All right. Justice League in those days, and there were a number of comics this way, were published only 8 times a year. Right. So DC had books that were published monthly, bi-monthly, and 8 times a year. So you would have 2 issues, skip a month, 2 issues, skip a month, etc. And so when these first came out, it just got to me and I said, I don't want to miss these. And I was just afraid because, you know, you go to the store to buy these things and, you know, they just put them up there and they may have 5 copies of something or 10 and you may miss it. Mm-hmm. So that's what got me to start subscribing and getting the books, you know, with the subscription creases in those folded things. And these are the
more about us getting those books. Who cared about?
I wanted to make sure I didn't miss them. And I'll tell you,
worth it.
I think they usually come up in the summertime. I used to run when I knew it was time for that to come, because it used to come pretty much the same time of month. I used to run down to the mailbox in our apartment building. Did it come today? Did it come today? I mean, I just love these things. And these were the first 2. This is just such a great cover, you know, back after 12 years. All right. Number 21, right? Justice League of America, number 21. After 12 years. So now we think back and say, oh, they're way down like in the 40s. But back at this time, this was 1963.
Right.
They were only going for 12 years. That's all. So pretty interesting. Then the follow-up, because it was always a two-parter, right? Was this one here?
Yeah.
With Alan Scott, Green Lantern, there along with Hal Jordan. And I go ahead.
Who are you a bigger fan of, the Justice League of America or the Justice Society of America?
Well, in terms of, I would probably say Justice League, although, recently, over the last decade, this story's pretty much stunk as far as I'm concerned. I mean, some of them were okay, but the Justice Society, and I don't even talk about the original stories, but the Justice Society going back, it just was like this whole set of other heroes that were like the ones that I knew, but were different. And so when they've had some new series that have come out, I've got a bunch of them downstairs, and for the most part, they've been really good. I'm not picking up the new one now because I'm doing a lot of my reading now online, and so I'm not going out and buying the books unless I really want to. But they came out with a series once where all the characters were a Justice Society series, where all the characters were different. And I really wanted to love it, and I kept buying it. And I mean, I think I bought probably 20 issues before I said, this is junk. I just can't read it anymore. Because you got to go back, when you're using these type of heroes, you have to go back and see what the essence of those heroes are. Who were they? Where did they come from? How do you certainly bring them into a modern age, but that's why the Flash of Two Worlds was so great, Rob, because I mean, the fact that you've got Barry Allen trying to entertain some kids with his super speed, and he suddenly just vibrates and finds himself in Keystone City and kind of recognizes it, and then goes to a phone booth, which I can associate with, where there was actually a phone book in there, because most of the time when I lived in the city, the phone books were gone, and was able to look up and find the Flash and go there and get rid of the guys and go back. I mean, and then he goes back and he realizes that it was the comic books that he read as a kid, right. And just like amazing stuff, amazing stories. That was terrific. This type of stuff was terrific too, because they took the heroes as they were, and they worked with those heroes, and you got to know a little bit about them. Now, the stories in retrospect were not that great because there was so many heroes, and the writers really didn't know how to handle these heroes. So it was pretty standard type of stuff. You had team ups. They went out against these other multiple villains. They get defeated the first time. They come back. They come up with some sort of a rationale for defeating them. They go back, and the second time around, they defeat them. They get together and that type of thing. But just seeing the heroes and seeing what they are and where they came from and learning some of their history, to me, was just fantastic. So
and you got Bobby asking you a question, Joe. He wants to know who your favorite JSA character was. His is Wildcat.
Wildcat is pretty cool, I'd say, but maybe Alan Scott, because, and I don't know that I have a favorite, but maybe Alan Scott. But the reason I say that is that, and I don't even know if the current Alan Scott has the same weakness, but Hal Jordan's weakness is something that's, or used to be at least, something that's yellow, right? He couldn't affect anything that was yellow colored. And you know what Alan Scott's weakness was?
Wood.
Yes, wood. Isn't that great? I just said this is fantastic.
It can't be yellow because he's blonde,
I just thought it was so great that it's wood, and it's that to me. I just said this is great. Because I'm saying, I can go out against them. I'll just put a wood mask on and all that. It's like fantastic. So
she's made of wood.
So to me, that was, and it may be some others. I mean, I like the Flash. I like a few of the others that are there. Dr. Midnight was kind of interesting. Hourman was good, except that his whole thing was when the hour ran out. So he'd always be fighting against the hour running out. You know what I mean?
Right.
Gets old after a while. So anyway.
Now, Joe, I know you're a fan of animation, and Batman the Brave and the Bold cartoon I thought was one of the better Batman cartoons.
I'm rewatching it now.
And Wildcat was great on that.
Yeah. They're all great because I think that's that story. And I was talking to some of my DC Watch cohorts. I was talking to I forget who it was. If it was Dave or Pretty Fly or Chris, but we were talking about this, and I said, I'm actually starting to the DC animation, whether it's the series or the movies, is generally so good that although I may not go back and rewatch a Marvel or a DC movie, I may, but not as much. I will continue to rewatch these. As time passes, I'm always watching one of the series, and I hadn't watched Batman Brave and the Bold in a while, and I went ahead and I just started watching it about a month ago, and not, just say, hey, I'll watch a couple tonight, something like that.
The Gentleman Ghost episodes I like.
Yeah, the episodes are good, and they take the characters and they play the characters up in the way that they're kind of in the comic books. I mean, a little bit different because it's
a really good series, and I'm not even a Batman fan, and I think that series is fantastic.
Because it's not all about Batman. It's about these other his team ups that he has.
And Aquaman is hilarious in that series.
Yes, he's really funny. Not the best Aquaman, I guess, but
but good.
Okay, my next set of books, 2 books, are basically what I think is, if it's not the greatest Superman story ever, it's damn close.
Let Mark be the judge of that.
It's by Alan Moore.
It's the plant one, right? The parasite?
No. Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow?
Oh.
Okay. Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow, all right, was a book that spanned Superman and Action Comics. And this basically is considered the last Superman Silver Age story. Come on, Dave Bratton. All right. I gave you Superman the movie. You got to give me this one. All right. So the idea behind the Man of Tomorrow was that Julius Schwartz, who had been the editor for so many years on the Superman movies, Superman comic books, decided that as they went into kind of the rebooting everything after Crisis, that it was important that we give Superman, the Superman that we've known since 1939, 38, 39, give him a good send-off. So he said, you know what? Kurt Swan, who had been the Superman artist for years and years and years, all right, was ready to retire. So he says, I'm going to get Kurt Swan to draw this. And he said, I'm going to get Jerry Siegel to write it. Right. And of course, I'll edit it. So what happens? Siegel was otherwise engaged, couldn't do it. I forget why. I probably should know this, but I don't remember. And so at this time, Alan Moore is doing Swamp Thing.
Mm-hmm.
And Schwartz talks to him about this and says, I'm not sure who I can get to do this now that Siegel can't do it. And Moore said something along the lines of, if you don't let me do it, I'm going to kill you, or something like that. It probably wasn't like that. It was something like that. It was like, you got to let me do this. You got to let me do this. And he wrote one of the most amazing stories you ever want to see. And basically, I don't know if I should give the story away, but basically what happens is, and I'll give you some of it anyway, because you got to read this, because the ending is just perfect. It's just perfect. So what happens is all of Superman's villains basically start teaming up, against him. Some of his friends end up dying in this thing. And he ends up, I'm wondering how much to give away, but he ends up accidentally killing one of the villains, which brings the whole story to a very significant point and really brings up the ending. Superman disappears, basically, is what happens. All right. But you got to read it, and you got to read it to the end. Two-parter.
So he kills General Zod, and then DCU gets killed off because they fire the Superman
Ian.
act. Got it. Got
It
it.
wasn't
Okay,
Zod.
cool.
It's
That's
Superman,
nice.
the Man of Tomorrow.
It's Superman number 423, and Action Comics number 583. And
There's
the
Gary
interesting thing
spending
about
more
it
money.
was, excuse me.
There's Gary
Well,
spending
I'm
more
going to read
money.
it on Joe's recommendation.
This
Well,
is
you might,
what.
I'm sure it's been republished a number of times. It's really worth the read.
No,
I'm
no,
trying
no.
not to-
It reads differently if you read the republished. He has to get the originals.
Yeah, he has
It's
to
the
get
only
the
way to read. It's the only way to
It's
read
not
it, Joe.
super- It's not super expensive, Gary. It really isn't.
Well, I know it's a Superman comic.
Right. So they're never expensive. Well, you can see here in the first one, as we let Gary's statement go by the wayside, all the different, evil people.
No, I love
are
that
here and so
layout,
forth.
Joe. It's
And
cool.
in the next one, you see him basically, "Goodbye, Superman, we'll miss you." Is he goes away and he disappears. And the interesting thing about it was the first one was inked by George Perez.
Mhm.
So it looks a little bit different than the usual Superman because Kurt Schaffenberger used to ink Kurt Swan's pencils.
I know, Dave.
And so the second one is more like the Superman that you kind of know, but the first one's a little different because it has George Perez influence on it, which is kind of interesting. So sorry, Gary.
You're fine. That's a great story. I'm getting some ribbon on Dave for picking on you. He's like, "What's Action 1 worth, Gary?" We all know Action 1.
Oh, sure. If you go back that far.
Yeah.
Dave says, Gary, you won't regret it. You can always get the trade too.
But no, I want to read it because that's not the first time you brought that story up to me in conversation either.
It's really
like if it's had that much of effect on you.
I mean,
I'd
a
like
lot
to
of
read
it
it
is
and see
personal, right? Things affect you personally. When
Right.
I remember reading this way back when, and I was talking with Dave and other people about a new DC Watch show, and we're talking about Superman, and I said, I'm going to talk about this, and we'll do more, we'll talk more about it. But I said, I'm going to talk about this because to me, and when we talked about that, I took him out again and I read it again, and I said, it's still such a great story. That Alan Moore was just so good. And the thing about it is, and maybe I should read this because it's kind of cool.
I'll be hearing
way
from
he
Dave
starts
Bratton
it.
a lot.
Yeah. Here we
You can't
go.
knock Superman in front of
Dave is just like he just needs to accept no one's buying Superman anymore. Like,
And I agreed with him with Superman, the man, Christopher Reeve 1 being the best superhero
He
movie.
did.
So he's
He
got
did.
that going for him at least.
yeah,
He did. And well, Superman in the 1960s, if you take a look at some of his books, it always says the biggest selling comics magazine.
hmm
So he was big back then.
Yeah, before that, Joe Palooka says that. So there you go.
But in this book, I don't know. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm spending too much time on it. But I just love this.
No, that's what this show's about, Joe.
He starts it off with this thing at the top here, and I want to read this because it just shows you what a literary genius Alan Moore was. No matter what he might have written, he would have done well on. But this is what he writes. This is an imaginary story, which may never happen, but then again may, about a perfect man who came from the sky and did only good. It tells of his twilight, when the great battles were over and the great miracles long since performed, of how his enemies conspired against him, and of that final war in the snow-blind wastes beneath the northern lights, of the women he loved and of the choice he made between them, of how he broke his most sacred oath, and how finally all the things he had were taken from him, save for one. It ends with a wink. It begins in a quiet Midwestern town one summer afternoon in the quiet Midwestern future. Away from the big city, people still sometimes glance up hopefully from the sidewalks, glimpsing a distant speck in the sky. But no, it's only a bird, only a plane. Superman died 10 years ago. This is an imaginary story. Whatever happened to the man of tomorrow? I still get chills when I read that.
That's a great intro.
But I mean, that when you read that, you can't say Oh, this isn't going to be any good. I mean, it's just like a fantastic book. So, and to me, it's like, I mean, there were a lot of great Superman stories. I'm going to talk about one a little bit later on, but this to me is probably the best. And, you know, and it really kind of ends the Silver Age, you know, which is kind of my time. So, for me, that's great. All right. So before I get to
read it,
excuse me,
I'm definitely going to read it.
Okay. Yeah, I think you'll really enjoy it.
I mean, you talk about it so passionately, I can't not want to read it. You know what I mean?
Okay. All right.
And also, Dave Bratton threatened all of us. So,
chills, Joe. Chills. That's not a Batman punter reference, by the way. Everybody liked the Joe Chill thing. I know you're right, but you know, I'm an emotional guy. You know, we Italians, we're strong men.
You get the blood going.
Okay, so my last book before I have the story and the whatever the speculation thing is a couple of books I came about 2 years ago. I just happened to go into a new comic book shop in Florida, and the guy was selling these books for like, $4 or $5, and they just caught my eye, and I said, "What is this?" And so these are both Golden Age books. The first one, and these are both from outside the United States. The first one is from England, I believe. Yeah, the first one is from England, and it's Masterman.
Oh.
Masterman. Now, Masterman had 12 issues, and I looked up the 12 issues, and this isn't one of them. So I don't know if that person who wrote the article was right or wrong, but he had all the covers there, and this was not one of the covers. So this is Masterman, and it basically was these comic books were just basically parroting a lot of the U.S. type of stories that we had, and the story here was basically the same thing with the guy who gets some kind of a I don't know if it was a ring or some sort of talisman that allows him to basically change things, to make trees move around, and he has super strength and he can fly and all that. And so, but the interesting thing was the Masterman was the name of the person who gave him the talisman that allowed him to do what he needed to do.
Oh,
so he just took on that name. And the idea was that there were probably other Mastermen in the past, although they don't talk to you about that. So he lasted about 12 issues until about 1955, I think it was. So that's Masterman. And kind of a cool thing. Oh, and the inside, black and white.
Mm-hmm. Oh, nice. Even
black
better.
The other one was actually a great find. It was, although the story is really weird, like the other ones aren't weird. This is actually from Australia. Crimson Comet.
Ooh,
number 39.
Look at that cover.
Isn't that great?
Yeah.
I really like this cover. When I saw this, I was immediately, and I forget, the guy didn't want a lot of money for these things. I forget. I paid less than $10 for each one of them, I think.
That's a good deal.
Yeah. So Crimson Comet. So I'm trying to remember the story on Crimson Comet now. There was a guy, his name was Ralph Rivers. So I like the alliteration, right? And as a kid, something happened to his mother and his son, whatever. And his father, once his mother died, his father, who was a scientist, really worked really hard, believe it or not, developed these wings. And he attaches them to his son. And his son grows up with these wings. And so he always covers them like with a trench coat. So he looks like he's a hunchback, right?
Oh, wow.
So, as a kid, nobody liked him. And then as an adult, nobody liked him. And so he became the Crimson Comet, a superhero, because he can fly. And he developed like other fighting techniques and that type of thing. So I'm saying, what father would do that to his
I was going to say, the poor kid had a bad life because of his dad.
Yeah, I know. But it's from Australia, which I thought was really good.
Hang on, son, this is going to hurt you more than it's going to hurt me.
So they were pretty good.
So Australian. And you know what? The trade dress on that kind of looks like Underground Comics, Joe.
It does a little bit, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It was. Did I write down the name of was there a company on this?
Is Tip Top or?
No, I didn't write it down, unfortunately. He became a government agent, though.
Well, if no one likes you.
His father was a surgeon, of course. All right, hold on a second.
All right, give us some
It was
insight then,
Action
Joe.
Comics. That's it. I remember that now. Valor Comics and I remember reading that now.
Crack it open. Give us a peek.
Cool.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it was. I think it was Action Comics somewhere. Yeah, Crimson Comic number 39, published by John Edwards, in Sydney, Australia, and Action Comics Limited, 14 Bond Street, Sydney, Australia.
And you can always tell when they were trying to save money, and one of the pages is the actual other side of the cover.
Yep.
That was common there.
Yeah.
All the Australian books I've gotten are like that.
Yeah, so I don't have a lot of Australian books, Rob, like you. Unlike you, I have just.
I don't have a lot. I have 3.
It's
No,
Rob 3.
That's not true.
Joe
4.
1.
I have 4. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
3 Buck Rogers ones, and then.
See, I just want to get a Halo slab so I can have a Halo slab from over there.
Okay. Now that you guys have stuck with me through this, we'll go to.
Oh, it's been a pleasure, Joe.
To another super. So this is the story, and it's a simple story. I think I've said this story before, but here we've got the whole set of.
He's not kidding that 10-1-1 isn't going to happen today.
It's the 53-12-4, I think it's going to be.
Right.
So the reason I brought this out was twofold, because the next part has something to do with it as well. It has to do with the new, James Gunn Superman Legacy. He always shows this picture, but to me, this was another one of the stories that I just thought was really, really terrific. And the story about this that goes with it is that if it wasn't for this comic book, I may never have been on this show.
Wow.
I may never have met all you guys.
I remember this.
Never have gotten back into comics. I've mentioned this before, I'm sure, though I don't remember where, because you go on so many different things. But I happened to go to the Empire State Building, to the Scout Shop there, and when I came down, there was a store across the street, I think it was Jim's Comic World or something like that, right? I don't even know that it's there anymore. And I had some time, and I just decided to go in there because I had been out of comics. This is about, I think, 2006. I think I should have looked at the date on this, but it's 2006 or so. So I think this came out at the end. The number 1 came out at the end of 2005, if I remember correctly. But I was in the beginning of 2006, and I go in there, and he had all these long boxes, and he had like new comics on spinner racks and things like that. And so this just caught my eye. I said, "Oh, this is kind of interesting." I went back a few weeks later, and number 3 was there, and I loved.
Whoa, look at that cover.
And so this really caught my eye. And a few weeks later, where was it now? I think this was it. I went back, and this just intrigued me. All right.
Wow.
Lex Luthor, Clark Kent behind him. And I said, you know what? I'm going to buy this comic book. And I bought, however many were out then, I think 5 of them. And I just went back and I kept buying them. And I said, damn, this is really, really a great story. And then I started looking for other comic books. And so it got me involved in comics again. And so it was basically All-Star Superman that did that and led me to where I am today. Outside
That's awesome, though.
Space and time. What's that?
Said that's awesome, though. So prior to getting that, were you even reading your older books anymore, or had you just kind of stopped altogether?
No, I stopped altogether. The one thing that I did do is my nephew, who's now like in his 40s, when he was a young kid, and the X-Men movies first came out, I guess it was, he loved X-Men. and he knew that I had, those early X-Men comic books. And I know some friends of mine that'll cringe about this, but he told me, he said, Uncle Joe, he goes, I really like the X-Men. He says, I know you have the comic books. Can I look at them? I said, well, they're down in the basement. This was something like Christmas or, Thanksgiving or something like that. But I felt kind of bad for him. So I went down in the basement and I grabbed about, 10 or 15 of them. And I brought him up to the bedroom. I sat him down on the rug and I said, okay, you can look at these, but you have to be really, really careful. You better not rip it. If you rip one of them, I'm going to get really upset. So the poor kid at the time, I was watching him. He was going like this, moving it really slow, looking at the books. I felt so bad for him. But you know what? He didn't do any damage at all. He did a great job with them. But that, to me, I think, Gary, was the only time that I ever really looked at those books until I started getting back into them, and then, found another box I didn't know existed, all the stuff like that. So this was, to me, and always will be, an important book, an important series of books. Now, I'll tell you, the story ain't no slouch. Mm. It's another imaginary story, if you will.
Right.
But that's one of the things with Superman. Superman is so entrenched in things. People they say don't know how to write for him. There's ways of doing this. There's ways of making Superman relevant and so forth. You don't have to, and imaginary stories let the authors basically go where they want. And I think that's part of the problem. They have to be able to do that, but do that within the sphere of, whatever the universe happens to be. But the imaginary stories, or they call them Elseworld now, whatever. I mean, that to me is great because the author and the artist can put together some really fantastic stories. And so you can see the two that I brought up with Superman were, Alan Moore here and Grant Morrison here. And they're both great. Now, this is such a great story. There is a DC animated version of this. But basically, it takes maybe about 4 issues or 5 issues of this and puts the story together. So it's the main story, the main thing that happens, But there's so much richness in this series because there are 12 issues to it. And there's a lot that goes on that's not in the animated movie, And so, yeah, watch the animated movie. You'll get the sense of it because it's really, really good. You'll get the sense of that story and you'll enjoy it, and it'll be really good. But read the 12 issue set because that's really where you get the full richness of Grant Morrison and Frank Quitely's artwork in this, which is kind of unique.
Okay, Joe, I'm admitting this on a live broadcast. The last time you talked about that series of books, I went, okay, fine. And I went out and I got the trade paperbacks. And you're right, actually. And I'm admitting that in public view. You were right.
Is Dave still on?
It is. Everybody's signed off.
Superman, is that what this is?
It is a great story, and it's well written, and it was actually a fun read. The whole thing.
He's just trying to get on DC Watch, Joe.
No, I'm not. They'll never let me on DC Watch.
Which story is this one?
DC Watch is for special DC people.
Sorry, Rob, what was that?
I said, which story is this?
All-Star Superman.
All-Star Superman.
That's what I thought.
I'm sorry, Rob. Right. All-Star Superman, yes.
All right. Yeah, I've only heard anytime somebody says something negative about Superman, Mark from Legion of Comics says, go read this one and then come back. And it's always All-Star Superman. So
yeah,
it's great. But I will tell you also, if you want to look at something older, Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow is just so.
I want to read that one most because that's the one you've told me about the most.
Yeah. I mean, they're very different. Although I'll just leave it at that. They're very different with respect to the stories, but they had to be. Because one was putting to rest, the Silver Age, Golden Age, Silver Age Superman. And this was just a great, and the All-Star Superman is just like a great story, just a fantastic story. you know, and it'll if you've got a heart, you'll start to tear up on this one.
See, I liked it. So what does that prove? So there.
But you probably didn't tear up, Mark. No.
Well, listen to the whole story. Listen to the whole story there, Tyler, except for the title of the book. Apparently, I missed it. That's all. Jeez.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. Anyway, okay. So, so that was the story. Now for the spec. Now, I'm not really a speculator.
That's what I heard.
Yeah, he has all those comics he bought for 2 cents that are worth.
That's right. I mean, I heard you're the greatest speculator on the planet.
Yeah.
I never brought the 2 cents up. I brought up 12 cents. That's it.
No, you've brought it up many times before. You are the king of speculators.
Because it makes me unique, Mark.
Okay, suddenly he's addressing the jury. The glasses are off.
Wait, who was that with the glasses off?
So for your speculation pick, just buy everything and wait 60 years, and then something will be worth something.
You have to live that long, which I'm grateful for, you know, because, you know, and Rob knows some of this, because we're going to do Comics Curing Cancer. I'm hoping to be helpful with that too. But, you know, families lose people. I'm just thankful that I've lived this long and I'm able to rub it into all you guys about the 2 cent comic books I bought.
Yes, but Matt Woods is commenting on it too.
I didn't bring it up, Matt. I didn't bring it up.
It's like Matt and his ASM1 story, right?
Yeah. Yeah, Matt really shouldn't be chucking that at anybody, you know, like just of all people.
Right.
Matt's just glad he gets to say it to somebody else for a change.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, so for my speculative, and again, I'm just an accidental speculator, you know, because I find comics that I've bought, some of them back in the day, others that I bought since I got back into comics in 2006. And suddenly I say, oh, this might be worth some money, you know, that type of thing. So I'm going to focus in again on James Gunn, Superman Legacy, and at least some rumors and some announcements that have come out there. The rumor is, at least one of the rumors is, and I'm not sure this is accurate, but it allows me to show the comic book. So one of the rumors is that he's going to be working his way over the space of, I don't know how many years. I'll probably be dead by the time he gets to it, but working over a number of years to Crisis on Infinite Earths. And so again, an important, there's more. There's always more, Jackson. You know, I asked for a 5-hour show, but Gary said I could go a little over an hour. So
look at you tying it back together with your Blue Beetle here.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. That's right. So it ties back to that. But I happen to have both the direct and the. I don't know why I pulled 2 out like this, but anyway.
What? No Canadian price variant, or
no? And I have some of them that are some of the ones that I bought way back when. I have multiple copies of them, and I have a couple of them that have been graded that I'm going to show on your show on September something or other, right, Rob? I'm going to be for the first time on Only Slabs. So dropping
Did you force your way onto another show?
Yes, I did.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, so this might, I mean, this always has a little bit of value, people, but it doesn't really have the value that it should. And I think if they do work their way towards a crisis type of event, you know, something like this, I think that this may come up in value. But more importantly, there have been a couple of announcements. And one of these comic books I showed recently about characters that are going to be in James Gunn's new universe, DC universe. And let me take this out because it's a bad cover. I got to change this. But one of them,
bad cover.
No, it's a bad bag rather. One of my favorites is Metamorpho. Mm-hmm. And so this is his first appearance. Actually, this is number 1. I do have his first appearance in Brave and the Bold 58, I believe it is. But as I was looking for the books, this one came out, so I just pulled this one out. All right. And Metamorpho, I'm not sure how they're going to do it in the comic books, but he's just a fun character because he could just change his body into anything. So Green Lanterns rather always use like, punching bags and other things. But he does all this crazy type of stuff. And the way it's drawn and everything is very cartoonish in some way. And I just love it. So I have the entire run, his first run and his second run in 2006, which was not as great, not the same artistry and so forth, but it was very good. But so I think this, and especially Brave and the Bold 58, will probably be going up in value once once Superman Legacy comes out and we see Metamorpho there. So that's good.
You have his DC special too?
Yes, I do. There were some characters that I pick up, try to pick up the different books that they're involved with. Like Booster Gold is another one. So I have his entire first run, multiple copies of #1. And I also have some of his other comic books. I have some of his second series as well, but I look to see where he's there. Captain Carrot is another one. I picked up a number of different books that Captain Carrot is in. So there's just some of them that if I see them, I don't purposely go out and look for them necessarily. I have them on a list. And when I go somewhere, I just take out my list and I look and see if they have the book. And if they do, I pick it up.
Yeah, you got quite a few when you were here in Rochester for your JLA
I did.
run.
I did.
Just, JLS run. Yeah.
And the last book I have, I'm glad everybody's happy about this, was we know he's going to appear at least on a Max, HBO Max, I guess, series. And that's this guy. All right.
Oh,
So so this actually, let me see. I want to make sure.
Second appearance of
It's it's the first appearance of Jon Stewart, right?
Right.
But it's the second appearance of Guy Gardner.
That's what I was. Yeah.
Yeah, I know that's what you're going for. So I don't have the first appearance, unfortunately. At least I don't think so. I still got only about half of my books on CLZ, so they could be in one of the other boxes that I haven't gone through yet. But I don't remember getting that or having that. But I do have this one. And
there you go.
Go ahead.
That one.
Yes, that's it. Exactly. It looks so familiar to me. I'm thinking it might be there, but I don't know. I gotta have to go down and take a look at that. I have one issue of Plop. Milt. I have one issue of Plop. I have to find it, but it's down there somewhere. Anyway. So this is pretty cool. And I think having that one that Rob just showed would be actually a nice companion to this one. So it might be one that I'm going to be looking for and seeing what's there. Yeah, Rob has them both. Rob is the connoisseur of silver, gold, and Bronze Age comic books.
Not really. But
when I grow up, I want to be Rob. So, okay. So those are my...
I was just saying that I followed your spec pick and I went and grabbed it. That's how quick I was.
Well, you were pretty good. I'm glad that you didn't clutch your heart this time around. So right. I think that's good, because over the year you went out and you bought all the books that were there. And I had some really cool books I could have shown, but I wanted to spare you the potential heart attack. So I didn't show them this time around. I just thought I'd wanted to show some books that I was really
You'll save that for only
happy with, So that's it. That's my 30, 12.
You know what, Joe? That's exactly what this show is about, as the stories and your connection with books. Like that's when it's really working well. And just hearing your love for those, especially those couple Superman stories, is just fantastic.
Right. I'm glad when you finally read them. Whatever happened to the Men of Tomorrow, let me know, because I think you're gonna see. It's just, it's a typical like 1980s story,
Right.
But it's just so well done, and Alan Moore is just like a fantastic writer. As we all know. He's done so many great books. So, and All-Star Superman, if you can read that too, if you haven't read it.
I'll probably try to get the trade for that.
Well, let me tell you a quick story if you have some time about All-Star Superman.
Sure.
All-Star Superman, when the animated movie came out, DC was having a contest. And the contest, you just put in your name or something like that, and you could win tickets to the premiere, the East Coast premiere, which was on 52nd Street. Oh God, what's the name of the guy that ran CBS? Oh God, I can't remember the name of it now. That's one of the problems when you get this old, you forget things. But anyway, there's a theater there where they show kind of these interesting movies and so forth. And so I actually won. And so I had my best friend, John, who I bought the books from. And I tried to get in touch with him and I couldn't get in touch with him. And he didn't pick up my emails or anything like that. And he found out about it later and he was like kicking himself. So I went there and I watched the movie. They had a panel afterwards and so forth. It was just really, really terrific, a really terrific experience. And so if you want to, I mean, both of those animated shows, that I mentioned, but the All-Star Superman is like one of the great animated stories. And again, you do get a great idea of the books, but it's really a good idea to read it throughout so you get the full flavor of the story.
Now, I wonder if they'll ever do that two-parter as a movie.
I don't know. It's very different. If you, I guess you could adapt it and modernize it, but I think it would lose its kind of silver/Bronze Ages type of appeal.
Nice.
You'll see it, and I love the fact that it was Kurt Swan that drew it, because that was my Superman artist. Growing up, I mean, that was him. Yeah. So,
fantastic books, Joe.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, let's go around the horn then. Rob, what's coming up for you, sir?
Well, Gary, first and foremost, we should talk about the fact that Comics Curing Cancer is coming up. You should follow that other right there at Comics Curing Cancer, if not already. We got October 20th through 22nd. A lot of cool stuff coming in. We're starting to kind of post some of the pictures, some of the items that have been donated thus far. News and information will be coming out, including the schedule lineup and everything else. Last year, we raised $22,000 for the American Cancer Society and got big plans this year to hopefully make that look like chump change. So make sure you're following Comics Curing Cancer. Also, the CBC Awards are going on. A lot of people on this channel, on this panel, and in the chats have been nominated. Well, guys, please go to cbcawards.org and make sure that your voice is heard, regardless of who you vote for. Doesn't matter. Just have your voice heard. That way you can complain. If you don't vote, you don't get to complain. On my channel, Gary, I have just hit 1,500 subscribers, and I'm going to be giving away both these books to one subscriber. There's a video pinned on my channel that tells you what you got to do. You have all month September to do so. Channel members, paid channel members, also get a second entry. Membership has its privileges. Chance to win both those books. And other than that, I got my usual lineup of stuff. I got some CGC unboxing on Thursday. Saturday, we'll have things on Only Slabs. And this past Monday, we did our on Monday mail call where, yes, we did unbox this. But surprisingly, based on the comments, even though this is potentially one of the most important Silver Age books released, it's not the one getting all the love. You'll have to go take a look and see which book it is that's beating that book out for all the love.
I guess we will. And Mark, what's coming up for you, sir?
Well, let's see. I think I'm going to get beat up on your show Thursday night. So that's all I know. Oh, and Wednesday night, there's a group of us that's been supporting Isolation that we're having a live stream chat with Doug Bratton, the author. And I'm looking forward to that because I know Joe's going to be there, I think.
Yes, I am.
Yeah, and a bunch of us. So looking forward to that. And then apparently I'm in the hot seat on Thursday with you.
Yeah, it'll be fun. Joe's been sending me lots of dirt on you, so we got it covered. All right, coming up for me. Thursday, of course, we just mentioned it, Mark Andrews. Friday, we have an extra episode of the 1011. Right now, I have Chuck as a co-host. If anyone else would like to jump on, you're welcome. We got Scott Palachuk, who is also associated with Doug and Dave Bratton and Isolation. So he'll be on for his 1011 premiere.
Nice.
All right, so that's going to be fun. Also coming up, there's a lot next week. Wednesday night.
Hit that notification bell. You'll know when Gary's live.
Well, not for tomorrow night. I'm pulling a Rob and I'm double duty tomorrow night. I'm going to be on Scotty Vaughn's channel as a Conan collector, showing Conan stuff. Big shock there. After that, I'm on Comic Journey Influences and getting interviewed by CJ. So that's going to be a lot of fun. And if you guys don't know CJ, he's a great guy. So I'm looking forward to spending some time with him.
Gary drank the Kool-Aid.
This is my turn?
I've had like 4-hour conversations with him. He's a good dude.
No, I know.
Now it's Joe's turn.
It is. And Joe.
Well, tomorrow night, I'm going to have, or rather tomorrow, rather.
Marco's rushing me.
I'm going to have a I have a CGC unboxing. Again, CGC messes up, so that's what happened. But there was some good stuff. There's some good stuff in there too. And in the first time when I was on, I showed the first appearance of Batgirl, and I sent it in to CGC after cleaning and pressing it, and had CGC do it as well because I don't trust their handling of this stuff. And got it back, and it was pretty interesting what it came back at. So I think you want to take a look at that. The other than that, I think on the 13th, Wednesday the 13th at 8:30, we're planning an espresso mail call. All right, Mr. Andrews might be on it. I don't know. We'll see if he wants to grace the show with his appearance.
Only if you'll have me, Joe.
I always have you right in my sights.
Yeah.
But this is starting to sound romantic.
Bob and Weed.
I'm up, I'm seeing, I'm down, I'm rolling.
Yeah. Also coming up pretty soon will be another comic my mom let me keep. And that's going to be kind of interesting. And I'm working on a kind of, I've gone through some interesting changes in my collecting habits over the last 3 or so months because of some things that have gone on. And so I've been working on a kind of introspective type of video, which I almost got down the way I want it. Once I've got it the way I want it, I'll publish it. So it might be in a week or two or something like that. I'm not sure. So be on the lookout with that. I think it'll be kind of interesting to see.
All right, cool. Well, I got my notification bell on, Joe, so I'll be watching. All right, guys. Thank you so much. First of all, I want to thank the audience. We had a great crowd, like a great crowd tonight. Oh, and Jackson Roykirk was in there too. So thank you everyone for coming out to watch us. We really appreciate it. Thank you for all the support. Everyone's links are in the description below. And go check everyone out, please. I want to thank my co-host, Rob, as always. Thank you, Rob, for being the wingman. And I want to thank Mark Andrews for coming on. And I appreciate you coming on. Anytime I ask you, you're always game. Thank you so much. Joe, you already know. It's always a pleasure to have you on my channel. I appreciate you very much, buddy. And guys, as I like to end these things, keep it casual.